Cool. So welcome to this first of a series of four, where we're going to talk about the four agreements, about the Toltec teaching, and really the aim is about philosophy for real people in their real life, so a living philosophy. So yeah, basically, let me just kind of bring you back a little while. A while ago, like about 20 years ago, a bit more actually, nearly 25 years ago, I was just driving along a country road. So I'm driving along the road near here. Just driving along the road, and I see a truck. The truck is coming towards me. So in the other lane, that it's driving towards me. And what had been an enormous pain just sort of paused for a moment. It paused because the answer for that moment, the answer was clear. The answer was clear because if I just turned the steering wheel and drove into the truck, that the pain would stop. But then I suddenly remembered the two kids in the back of the car, and I wondered, was it better to take them with me? Because like it's a pretty painful world, or at least at that moment, that's how it felt. Or should I leave them? Should I leave them? So in that moment, the moment passed. I couldn't decide. And as I spent that moment not deciding, the truck passed. The whole thing was too late, and it was a missed opportunity. And you know how thoughts happen. So these are thoughts. That whole thing probably took 2 seconds. And then the next thing that completely overwhelmed me and engulfed me was shock. Shock that I had actually thought about killing my children. That I had actually thought that the love of my life, that thought had even come into my head, and that it was really very real. It was a very real possibility. And so what followed after that was about 18 years of soul-crushing guilt, like just the guilt. And kind of an exploration and a discovery that I just didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to receive help. I didn't even know what help I wanted or what help I needed. The driver, God love him, my husband, my mother, my father, my sisters, my brothers, none of these people even entered my thoughts. And they didn't enter them for years later. Like for years, I was so consumed by the shock and the guilt, and I was just in survival mode, that it was like many, many years before I even realized that there was another driver involved, or could have been another driver involved, never mind anybody else. I was completely with me and my children. I'm not really sure how I got home. I don't remember getting home, but I do remember sitting on the floor in the dining room where the kids were, like the kids were, one was 15 months old and one was 4 or 5 weeks old. I don't know how old she was, but I sat on the floor and I rang Parent Line because I don't know what you do, but you ring Parent Line. And the poor, God love them, the poor volunteer on Parent Line told me to ring the doctor, to go to the doctor. And I was kind of going, what the hell are you talking about a doctor for? Like, why would I go to a doctor? So I didn't. Then I rang my mom. So my mom said, yeah, that's because, you're at home by yourself with 2 children. So what you need is a job. And I have it sorted for you. You can start like immediately, and we'll get you out of the house, and that'll be brilliant. And so before Amy was 6 weeks old, I started working 1 day a week, and it's how I ended up teaching security. So I got to run a training company for door supervisors, which brings loads of stories of its own way, but wasn't maybe necessarily the most useful thing. I also told my husband, and my memory of that is he said absolutely nothing, just nothing. And years later, when I was eventually able to talk to him about it in a more sane way, he said he never heard me. He has absolutely no memory of this, of me saying to him, I am afraid I'm going to hurt our children. Um, and he's right, he's right because he didn't hear me. I have no idea what I said. I have no idea how I language it. I know in my body, I was saying to him, I am not safe to be left at home with my children. Um, and I don't know what to do. But he was in his own world and I have no idea what he heard. So I don't know what came out of my mouth and I don't know what went in his ears, but certainly we were definitely non-communication. Like we were just totally lost in our own pain, in our own drama. We were unable to support ourselves, let alone each other. So before this, I used to go to England every 6 weeks. I was involved in a philosophy group and an organization that we used to travel to England, but now I have two little kids, so traveling to England wasn't possible anymore. And so, as you do, because like I might be a slight, overachiever, if I can't go to a teacher, I brought the teacher to me. And the teacher that happened to appear in my universe at the time was Luis, who was a Taltech teacher. So he was trained by Don Miguel Luis, and my original teacher, my teacher in England, had actually given me the gift of the Four Agreements. That's a book that he would give out. So he'd actually given me that book, and hence I ended up working with Luis for the next number of years. And so my journey with the Taltech tradition began with the Four Agreements and began with me in unbelievable, massive pain. What I'm hoping to do over the next 4 weeks is to kind of bring us all on a journey through life, from birth the whole way through to death, and to kind of inquire and to look, how is it that we create this reality for ourselves, and then what tools have we got? How can we look at it differently? How can we support ourselves? How can we know what we need? How can we know what we feel, and how can we do something about it? And how can we become adults in this, for ourselves, with ourselves? And so I'm going to really be inviting you to explore and to wonder, where do we take actions that hurt ourselves? Where do we choose, and it's typically unconsciously, where do we choose to live in pain or drama? Where do we get disconnected from who we truly are? Like the Buddhists call it suffering. And like that moment when Amy was born, like, thank you for all these raging hormones, but I simultaneously was in massive pain. And a few minutes later, I was in massive connection. If I was feeding her, when I was nursing her, I just felt so connected to the world, to other people. I was just so open and raw and in love. And in other moments, I was in unbelievable pain and suffering. And it didn't necessarily have words. It was just sensation. But in a less extreme way, we create suffering all the time for ourselves. When we recreate the conversation we had with Mary Joan down the road last week, and we create this, like they say, the Buddhists call it suffering. Now, the Buddhists have this impression that, you have to live through this suffering. I'm a bit more positive than the Buddhist. I really think that heaven can exist on earth. I think both heaven and hell exists on earth, and we can access either heaven or hell as human beings in this body form. I have no idea whether I'm right or not, but this is the belief that supports me to do my world the best I can do. And for me, that moment when Amy was so young, I had heaven and hell simultaneously, or not simultaneously, but I switched from one to the other very fluidly, in this body, in this world. So this is where I'm kind of looking. I'm looking for us to invite you to kind of explore how that if we can wake up, if we can become conscious, if we become conscious, then we can discover that there is a choice, and that there's another path that we can take from this like suffering path, and that the story that you hear on the news, or when you sit down for coffee with someone who wants to get attached to your suffering and hook you in with their pain and your pain, that there is an alternative. And for me, that alternative is simply remembering who we are. That's it. Obviously, it's not that easy. As in, I think that's all we need to do, is to remember who we are. Because if we can remember that essence of who we are, and we can take a choice, every moment we have a choice to step towards who we are, or to step away from who we are. And that it's really that it's for me, it's really that simple. And so where for me, the four agreements, where the Toltec really supports me, is with this whole idea of, they call it the smoky mirror. We're going to talk about smoky mirror. We're going to talk about domestication. We're going to talk about wounds. And this for me is what gets in our way of seeing, of seeing what it is that is present, you know. So that in each moment of time, we can choose if we have that freedom, and our free human being has that freedom. Our domesticated crazy self with that wonderful personality and all those completely crazy beliefs that we have, that doesn't have freedom. And that is not who we are. This is maybe what we've used to protect ourselves or to support ourselves, but it's not who we truly are. So if we can start to see and use these tools to see who we truly are at any particular time, we know the exact and perfect response to each and every situation. And we can always take a step towards freedom, towards ourselves, and create a life for ourselves that is free from suffering, free from drama, free from pain, where we are free to choose, where we're free, you know, one of my favorite things, free to manifest the glory of God, and change the word God if you don't like it, but that glory of God that is within us. And in fact, I wouldn't say it's within us, I would say it is us. Not within some of us, but within all of us. As always, if I use language that is like, to you, just change the word, you know. So for this, what we're going to use for this conversation, like I say, I'm kind of basing it on the book, The Four Agreements, and from the Toltec tradition. The Toltec tradition obviously is massive. The book, The Four Agreements, to me is fantastic because it's a very simplified summary in really simple English, and yeah, it's simplified, and I like it because it's contained in this for them, you know, and you can remember what they are. So for anybody who hasn't read the book, or I better tell you what they are, and for those of you who have read it, see if you can hear what you think it is in what I'm saying, and we'll just play. It's just a play. So the first one is about speaking with integrity. To speak with integrity. It's probably the most important agreement, or at least, you know, Don Miguel reckons it's the most important agreement. And it's really all about the power of the word. Now, the power of the word, that's a concept that exists across most traditions. You know, the word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us. I can't remember the Hindu version, but there's something similar in Hinduism, something similar in Buddhism. A lot of the traditions will talk about the power of the word. In yoga, we talk about Om being a sacred word because it contains all sounds that are possible and creates all. So this whole idea of the power of the word. And in the Toltec tradition, they talk about the power of the word in terms of creating white magic or black magic. So white magic is where we can use our words that support someone to feel better. We give support to someone. We make them laugh. So we can create with the word. Equally, we can create black magic, and that's where we use the word to kill or to hurt or to harm, you know. And sometimes we create black magic unconsciously by speaking unconsciously. Sometimes we create black magic by speaking how we speak to ourselves, because who gets to hear most of what we say? We do. So we will talk about this, about the power of the word, absolutely, in terms of speaking to other people, 100%. It's really important. And if you're a parent or a teacher or a human being, how you speak to another is really important. But how we speak to ourselves, exactly the same as our yoga practice, is where it comes from. So one of the most important ideas is relating to this agreement, and like I said, this is considered one of the foundational agreements, is how we speak to ourselves. So how much do you speak to yourself? So you're probably kind of reasonably conscious that you talk to yourself, and you're probably conscious that you've got a couple of different voices going on. You know, like if you decide, oh, I'm going to the cinema, straight away, oh, well, I'm not going to the cinema because I have to put the wash on. comes up. So like straight away we have these conversations, and then you have these conversations when you get 3 or 4 or 5 people in the conversation. Have you had those conversations? You know, so you don't just have one voice or 2 voices, but you could have 10 voices in your head all at once. But not only that, even while you've been listening to me, now you made an intention, you signed yourself up, you sat yourself down, you got your cup of tea, but even now you have been talking to yourself. Because what's happened is I've said, I don't know what I said, the Buddhists say it's suffering, and you've gone, oh yeah, the Buddhists say it's suffering. I remember that because I read it in a book the other day, or oh yeah, I don't agree with that, or and you have gone off. So in actual fact, even while you've been listening to me for the last 18 minutes and 32 seconds, I'd say at least half of that time you're just talking to yourself. Talking to yourself about what you agree with that I've said, talking to yourself about what you disagree with what you said, maybe talking to yourself about how the dog has come in, or did I put the wash on, or whatever. But it's really interesting how much we talk to ourselves. So you probably come back to me now there for a second because I kind of took the piss out of you slightly, but you'll be gone again in 2 seconds. So, and for again, all of you teachers, we know that the students are only listening to us, and they don't even want to listen to us, but they're only listening to us for like a tiny amount of the time. So listening to and hearing what it is that we're saying to ourselves, paying attention to how we are with ourselves. It's a very common thing that if you were to speak to anybody else the way you speak to yourself, you'd have no friends. We are just, so that power of the black magic. But also think about the impact of that on your body and on your mind. So you might be talking to yourself about something that happened. So Mary Jane said whatever, or they parked up in your parking space, or they said boo to a goose, or they wore the same dress as you, or I don't know, whatever drama that you want to create, right? So the drama happened, and you had an embodied sensation. You could feel the tension in your body. Then what happens is you think about it using your language, and what do? You recreate all that pain again. And then it's really cool, because then what you can do is you can go meet your friend for lunch, and then you can tell them about the story, and then you can recreate the pain in more. Only for them, to hook them, you have to make the story even better. And now you've made it even better, like more pain than it was in the first place. And now you have this new pain story that you're now going to go around talking to yourself on the way home. Well, he's so right. And then she did it. And all the time we are creating these sensations in our body, and this tightness and tension and whatever else in our body. It's just, we're crazy. It's just, it's amazing. And that's something that did happen. What about how much time you spend running imaginary scenarios through your head? Oh, well, if I do this, then that, and maybe they'll say this, and then maybe then they'll say that, and then the other. And then we create the exact same sensations. We still get our tension in our body, our drama in our head, our throats, whatever, all of that. And nothing has actually happened. Like absolutely nothing has happened except you're talking to yourself. The power of the word is phenomenal. And it's really interesting, because for me, that's part of the reason why such strong dramas need to be taken, that we can't, to quieten that voice, we end up doing something like watching Game of Thrones or something kind of really so that we don't hear ourselves anymore, because we're so loud in our own, and our voices are so crazy that to get away from it, or when you go to sleep and your head is churning, that you need it to put another noise in, because we can't quieten our own noises. But anyway, that's the first agreement. I could rant for ages about it because I just love it so much. First agreement, probably the most important one, that we become aware of what we say, that we become aware of what we say to ourselves, we become aware of what we say to others, and then we have choice. For me, this freedom is about choice. When we're not conscious, when we're not, like I've said stuff to my daughter, she's great, because she'll go, that was very hurtful. And I go, oh wow, sorry, actually you're dead right. And it's just come out of my mouth with no intention of being mean in any way, and it hasn't been kind. So like, the more, I can't do anything about that except that she pointed it out to me. So now I have the information and I can choose. So looking to really listen, so that we can use our ability to create white magic, use our power for truth and kindness. Truth and kindness. And you know what the Buddha said? Is it necessary and is it kind? So truth, you can kill with truth. Is my ass big in this trousers. Yes, your ass is huge in that trousers. Maybe that's not, it's true, but is it kind? You know? So truth and kindness to ourselves and to others. I love this idea of like leaving a little fairy dust everywhere we go. And we can do that with our smile. We can do that with just with our hello, to someone who's having a bad day. How's it going? But we can create that little fairy dust. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. Now, here's the thing. Nothing anyone else is thinking, feeling, or doing is because of you. Let me repeat that. Nothing anyone else is thinking, feeling, or doing is because of you. I just told you 2 seconds ago that when I use my words unconsciously, that my daughter felt hurt. Nothing anyone else is thinking, feeling, or doing is because of you. Now, there's a dilemma we're going to come back to next week. How is it possible? And it's something I want you to kind of think about. My intention is to speak with kindness. How she takes it up and interprets it is not on me. How I speak is on me. And there are consequences, actions and consequences. This is years of unpacking. So I'm just going to drop that little thing in there and we'll talk about it again next week, but just kind of wonder about it. Anyway, so nothing, I'm going to take an easier example for this week because it's our first week. Nothing anybody else is thinking or feeling or doing is because of you. So here's an example. I'm going to start with my easy example. You're a chair. Yes, you. No, not the other people on the call. You. You are a chair. Okay. Notice what's going on in your head. Man, you're going, has she got a point? Has she gone nuts? Is it gone whatever? She's clearly not talking about me. Okay, so here you are. Not only are you a chair, but you're an ugly, uncomfortable chair. Have you got anything going on now? Notice, is there anything going on in your body? Alternatively, you're a beautiful, soft, gorgeous chair. Anything? Clearly, you're not a chair. Clearly, and I'm not a chair. So whatever, if I see you as a chair, that's me seeing you. If I see you as a beautiful chair or as an ugly chair or as a soft chair or as a hard chair, you're not a chair. This is purely my perception of you as a chair. Yeah, you're not a chair. So whatever, like you instead, you might go, oh, that poor girl, she's just gone nuts. She thinks I'm a chair, right? Or you might go, oh, I'm sure Laura has a point. I'm going to hang in here until she gets the point. Or maybe you're like, Jesus, you know what? I should be putting on a wash. It'd be much more useful than sitting here listening to this young one talking to me about being a chair. All potential different reactions, all not relevant to me calling you a chair. Yeah. What I see is inside my head. How you interpret it is inside your head. We'll come back to me asking for help from my husband. I told my husband that I was afraid I would kill my children. His children. Do you think there is any way on this planet that if he heard that he wouldn't have taken action? Either got me committed or taken the children away or at least made me a cup of tea. There's no way. So he did not hear what I said. What happened inside my head and what happened inside his head were two completely different heads. No interaction between the heads. Yeah. So we can use language to try and help that communication, but it's inside me, and what's inside him is inside him. Nothing I do or say or feel is because of somebody else, and nothing somebody else does or says or feels is because of me. However, It is because of agreements that we have made with ourselves. So that's what I want to kind of talk about later on today, is how we make these agreements with ourselves and how we interpret our life through these agreements that we have made ourselves. So we make these agreements with ourselves about what the world is like, and that is what we see through. So that's how we interpret things. And if someone and our wounds. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the agreements that we've made with ourselves are typically lies. They're typically lies, and they're typically unconscious. And they're typically made when we're pre-verbal, which is really interesting, but we'll come to that again. And here's an example of when I got to learn this in a really cool way, because I said you were a chair. This is only an example that I've used in the last 7 years or so. Because about 7 years, up until about then, the example that I would use is, I would say, when I was talking about taking things personally, is I would say, you're wearing a yellow dress. Now, please tell me nobody here owns a yellow dress. If you do, please ignore this, right? But I grew up in the 70s when people still wore yellow, and then thankfully they stopped. Although now I see Kate as a yellow top on. So not mustard, right? Yellow, right? Anyway, so I used to say, oh my God, you know, like, okay, yeah, nobody had yellow dresses. So I'm in a yoga class and I'm rocking out my little, you know, 4 agreements thing. And I say to a girl who's just beside me, imagine I said to you that you were wearing a yellow dress. Now, let me say, it was a yoga class. This girl had a t-shirt and leggings on, right? And I said, imagine I said to you, you were wearing a yellow dress. And I said it, and, you know, what a crazy yellow dress or something, you know, mad yellow dress. And you would be thinking, oh, poor old Laura, because clearly you're wearing leggings and a t-shirt, okay? You with me? And so I do my whole, you know, I'm delusional, and you'll come and say, poor old Laura, isn't she, oh, you know, isn't it very sad that she sees me in a yellow dress while I'm clearly wearing leggings and a t-shirt? Everybody else in the room agrees I'm wearing leggings and a t-shirt, but Laura there thinks I'm wearing a yellow dress. It's worked for years, this story. Anyway, next thing, I'm looking at this girl and she's clearly upset. She's clearly like, I've clearly, you know, I have clearly, and I'm like, ooh, I've gone too far. Oh, like and I don't know what's going on, because I'm talking about, imagine I said you're wearing a yellow dress and you know, I'm doing my whole thing. Anyway, turns out this woman had bought a yellow dress and she had worn it to a wedding the previous weekend. And she took personally me having a conversation about, imagine if you were wearing a yellow dress. So for me, this was fantastic, because to everybody except this poor lady, it's so obvious that that was her wound, because we're going to talk about wounds, insecurities, and stories. That was her story about a yellow dress that I had hit up against. I had smacked bang into her insecurity about her yellow dress. I have no idea. I'm sure the yellow dress was gorgeous, but I had hit her insecurity about the yellow dress. And she was hurt by me talking about this random yellow dress, which clearly I hadn't seen, which clearly I wasn't talking about, because she was in the yoga class. Did I mention she was in a yoga class with like leggings and a t-shirt on? Yeah. But what I was really interesting is that was it. Now, then she never came back. This is a lady who'd been coming to my class maybe for 2 weeks, 2 times a week for years. And took personally what I said about the yellow dress, was wounded by this yellow dress story, and couldn't come back to the class. Now, I hope to God she found a yoga teacher somewhere else. But just in terms of, and thank you to this beautiful lady who has given me this gift of having a story that we can share, but to see how we can take things personally, and we can be hurt by stuff that isn't what we think it is. Does that make sense? That was really desperate English, but hopefully you have an idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, it was really shocking to me to see the way we interpret, how much we see is totally inside our heads, and how what we hear is totally inside our heads. So nothing that I do is because of somebody else, and nothing that somebody else does is because of me. We are in a co-creation of a world, but in terms of how I act, that's on me. I'm an adult. You're not talking about a 4-year-old. Yeah. So that's don't take things personally. The third one is don't make assumptions. And they act really nicely together, you know, taking the language, not taking things personally, don't make things, making assumptions, really, really tie in nicely together. So don't make assumptions. My favorite one is there I am, you know. Um, uh, it's a very simple idea, but it can be really hard to implement. So I'm there at home in the kitchen, running a bit late, place is in a mess. Dinner's half made. I'm about to run out and leave to teach a class. Now, I know you know that all yoga teachers are Zen, right? And we float around in like little clouds and nothing ever, you know, ever happens. And that's obviously true. But in this case, I was just pretending to be a normal human being, just pretending, just for this day, when, you know, the house was in chaos, the kids weren't fed, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. And I had to run out the door to get to a yoga class. Thank God for the yoga class, because when I always just float back on that bubble. But anyway, so anyway, my husband walks in, and we're married a long time, so he doesn't have to speak. He can go. Now that was it. So there's no like words. There's not even a full breath. It's just the slightest little catch of a breath, the tiniest little bit, and then the face will come on, the smile will come on. Hey kids, how are you doing? Da, da, da. But there was a little microsecond of a catch of a breath. Now, if you're not good with someone that long, maybe they have to use their words, but like, you know, maybe I can mind read or something. So straight up, I'm like, yeah, no, for crying out loud, like, does he really not know like that? What kind of a day I've had, and that blah diddy blah diddy blah diddy blah, like blah blah blah. Does he not know? Like, how can he have those? How can he think those thoughts about me? Now I'm the woman with the yellow dress, yeah. So I have no idea. In actual fact, I have no idea what his thoughts were. I have no idea whether I don't know anything about it, but I have made up this entire story in my head because I have made assumptions. I have made assumptions about, and I'm taking it personally, but I have made assumptions about what he's thinking. I am assuming he's thinking, for crying out loud, I've been out all day working and I come back to this house. Oh, for crying out loud, she's been doing nothing all day. Can't she not have the dinner made? Oh, for crying out loud, whatever, 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 whatever. He hasn't opened his mouth. He has taken half a breath. And I have now made all of these assumptions about what's going on. Now, obviously, I'm right because, like, you know, I know these things. But maybe if I could actually use my words rather than taking it personally and making assumptions, maybe I could say something like, how was your day, dear? And then he could say something like, oh, well, wow, I'm really tired because I'm really kind of vibrating a bit like this because there was a car accident on the way home, and you know, and now I'm kind of coming in and I have a call to, you know, have a call coming in for work, and I'm a bit like da da da. And then I could say, wow, that sounds really hard. Would you like a cup of tea, dear? Or wow, that sounds really hard. Sophie, make him a cup of tea, dear. I'm going to class, or whatever. Or, but the thing is that I have gone off instantly making assumptions and taking things personally. And we are not in communication. Whereas once we get back into communication, then we can use our words, our white magic, to say, wow, that sounds really hard. Love you very much. Have to run. Goodbye. Or whatever. Like whatever. But the thing is that when we are caught in our assumptions and are taking things personally, we're not in communication, so we can't possibly co-create a solution, whatever that solution is. And so that's our, now that's it's a very mundane example as opposed to like a big flashy example. But for me, it's a lot of these tiny, tiny little mundane moments where we take things personally, where we make assumptions, where we don't speak with integrity. They're like the micro wounds, the little, like we talk about the tears in the tendons that are micro tears, but then after a while, suddenly then they have tendonitis in some tendon, but it's been over the years developing. Similarly, these little wounds that we make where we get out of communication with another, we're also getting out of communication with ourselves. Because if I was in communication with myself, then I would realize it was all nonsense. Why was I? And that's what we're going to look at. Like, why did I feel guilty about not having the dinner made, or having the house in a mess, or not having the tea on when he came, or whatever it was that what I was feeling guilty about. And that's what we're going to look at why I interpret why I interpret this sort of stuff the way I interpret it. So thankfully, there's the fourth agreement, which we're going to need to really keep us like sane. And the fourth agreement is, in the book, it says, always do your best. And it talks about the fact that you should always do your best. Now, working with the teachers, in the way I work with the teachers, me being a good old Catholic girl, you know, or at least originally, and coming from the kind of background that I come from, this was interpreted by me as you should always do your best, like I should, another thing to do. So with a lot of work with this man, he eventually, and I'm saying this was years, this was the hardest of all of them, this was the hardest, we are doing our best. We are. If you could do better, you would. Now, that is not, I can hear all the Catholic heads going, oh, but that lets you off the hook. And sure, well, then why don't I just go around and just do whatever I want? Well, okay, do that and then see what the consequences of that are. And I suspect very quickly you will realize that that is taking you further away from being in sync with yourself, and that you will be called back to become in sync with yourself. The beauty of this is around guilt. And the power of this is around guilt, and it's around choice. So I spoke to my daughter. I can't remember anymore what I said. Oh, she was in a dress. She's trying on these dresses for her TY ball. And I might not be the most makeup-y, jewelry kind of fancy dressy kind of person in the world. And so if someone wants support with them, let me give you this notice now. I'm not the person to come to. Anyway, she arrived in a dress. It's almost a bit too tight for her. And I did the same as my husband, that half a breath. I didn't go, wow, that's amazing. It was like a, what, how do I, what? It was a micro breath, but she's been living with me all her life. And she was upset. And she said, I said, I'm really sorry for that. That was not my intention. And she said, that was very unkind how you did that. And I said, you know what? You're dead right. It was. And we had a conversation about it. And we agreed that at this point that she was too hurt to come and show me the dress now, but that she'd go put on her tracksuit and feel sorry for herself for a while, and then get a hug, and then we watched film. And a day or two when she was feeling better, she'd come back and she'd show me the dress. And that's pretty much what happened. And we have other solutions. It gave me a chance as well. We have loads of other solutions, and now she has this most spectacular dress. But that was just me being unconscious and not having the space to go, woohoo, that's amazing, which I can't remember what I was coming in from, but I was coming in kind of in my own head. I was 100% doing my best, 100%. Now that I have the information remembering that this is really important to her, and that I could have done it differently. So now I do it differently. You know, I now am making a much bigger effort to get excited about her makeup and her 300 types of jewelry and her, like, look at these, same picture as I looked at but not because I don't want her to feel bad. It's because the kind of person I want to be is one that is sensitive to what she wants. The kind of mom I want to be, the kind of person I want to be, is to be kind. And being kind at this point would be giving her attention in that way, being excited about a piece of jewelry. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'm not responsible for her feeling bad. She felt bad because she didn't like the dress. Like that was her story and her insecurity about the dress that I touched against. Yeah. But I touched against it, and being her mom meant that I have a lot of power in terms of really hurting her because I'm her mom. But the hurt was her insecurity about the dress. She has another dress now, and had I taken a breath of that, she'd have said, for crying out loud, man, she'd have given me grief or something. You know what I mean? It would have been a different relationship, a different interaction. However, for me, while I 100% accept I was doing my best at the time, that is not how I would like to be. So being aware of the fact that I was tired before I came in, I can't remember, there was some whatever. But had I been more conscious that this leaves me vulnerable to not being present, then I could have switched it around a bit. So making sure that I'm more aware of that so that I don't allow myself get so tired, for example, or that I set her up. So I say, listen, I'm a bit kind of doing a lot of things today. So can I look at your dress on another day when I can be present for you or whatever. But I now have a choice. It's about a choice. I'm not responsible for how she felt, but I am responsible for me not being caring in that moment. Does that kind of make any sense? So this business of always doing your best means I can forgive myself because I was doing my best 100%. And now I have more information and I can choose to do it differently. It doesn't mean that I'm off the hook. And there is a consequence. There's a consequence because the consequence of me being thoughtless was that there was a chain reaction and then we had to clean it up. Because that's what I want, how I want to live, that I want it to be cleaned up, not just ignored and pretended and forget about. I want that these little micro wounds that we make, that we clean them up as we go so that we aren't building on them, that we're becoming stronger. And so there's a consequence. It's not good or bad. And this was a real big challenge for me to get my head around. It's not good or bad. It's not good or bad. It's simply a consequence. I am always doing my best. So when I see something that I did that I would like to do differently, I can forgive myself. And in time, I don't even need to forgive myself because I just know I was doing my best. But in the beginning, I need to forgive myself. And I can forgive those around me because whatever I apply for myself, I can apply to another. And it's not possible for me to truly forgive my husband for not helping me if I cannot forgive myself for not being able to ask for help. And if I want to build trust back again, I need to be able to truly forgive and to know that we are both doing our best. Little example, bigger example, that we are doing our best. And the more we can become sensitive to ourselves and our own needs, the more we can become sensitive to others and their needs, and the more then we can make choices that support us being who we truly are. Because truly, we're not mean bitches. Like truly, we are light. That's it. We are light. And so our true selves can't hurt somebody else. It's our wounds that hurt other people, not our true selves. Anyway, so there you go. So far, oh my goodness, we're not getting much time for questions. This is grand. So the kind of idea here is these are our tools, the tools that we have. And what we're looking at is to use these tools to heal our wounds. Now, I've talked a little bit about the wounds, but not so much. And to clear this smoky mirror, which is our belief system, so that we can release ourselves from our domestication, from this set of rules that we have developed for ourselves. We've developed them from ourselves when we were pre-verbal. And I think what we might do is talk more about that at this stage next week, about how we develop these rules using language if we were pre-verbal, but that's kind of deadly. And then we're looking to use these 4 agreements to support us identify our wounds, first of all, and then heal our wounds and free ourselves from our domestication so that we can free ourselves from suffering, so that we can fundamentally be free to live our Dharma, be free to manifest our Dharma, to be who we truly are. And so that's what we're going to be kind of talking about, the domestication, our smoky mirror, which is like lack of clarity, and look at it, how it transfers through our entire lives, and what we can do with it, how it shows up in different ways, how to identify it, and then how to make choices about what to do with it. I'm just going to what time is it? 1:15. So I might do I might just talk a tiny little bit about domestication, wounds, and the smoky mirror, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're working with, so that you can then over the next week see, can you identify these different things, and then we'll talk next week about how we actually create these set of rules for ourselves in the first place. Is that okay? You happy enough? Anybody got burning questions that you want to? Cool. Okay. So domestication. This is, I'm using this word because this is This is the Toltec word for it. Pre-programming, there's all the different like psychologies and philosophies all have different words. So I'm going to use the word domestication because we are talking in terms of the four agreements. Domestication is what your birth mother, in other words, when you were in the womb, and your main carers, so they whoever they were, your mum, your dad, your whoever it was, whoever they were, whether they did much caring or little caring, we can talk about that next week, what they did to you. And then after that, it was your community, your school, and everybody you interact with. But it's really that first year, 9 months in the womb and the first year where a lot of that happens. And then for the first sort of 4 years, it's kind of, you build on that again. And then we're creating this framework that will continue on, that we're still building now. We're still making rules now, but the real core stuff happens very, very young. And that is the framework. It's the framework that we have that has defined for us what it is to be human, how it is to be human, how it is that we interact, how it is to be alive, how it is to be safe, how it is to survive. So be really grateful for this rule book, because it's what has kept you alive until now. It's where you've learned, what is the impact of crying? Did you, when you were crying, were you ignored or did you get attention? How do you get attention? How do you get help? How do you get your needs met? What did you learn in your house from an early age? Did you learn that being sick made you get attention? Did you learn that being strong meant that you got approval? Did you learn in school that being the class clown was the way to be? Or to be the quiet one, or to be the good one? So we all have these kind of stories. We all have our own stories, our own versions of these beliefs that we've got from particularly our I'm going to call them parents, but I mean our foundational people, plus everybody else. And then we've developed our own book of laws, which we'll talk about again more next week. We've accepted those beliefs and we've taken them on to be true. Most of them, I'm going to give you a heads up for what we're going to talk about next week. Most of them are bullshit. Most of them are not true. They are lies. But we have received them directly from our parents. So obviously they're wrong, like they screwed us up. They received them directly from their parents. So, okay, then it's not our parents' fault, then it's our grandparents' fault. Who received them directly from you, guess what? Their parents. So basically it's Adam and Eve. Forget what it said in the Bible. Adam and Eve are the ones that screwed us up directly, the whole way. This is where it becomes really important. If people could do differently, they would have done differently. And it's mostly, even more important, what work we do on ourselves, how we change our book of laws, how we become free will affect generations going forward. Generations going forward. And it's not just if you're a parent affecting your children. I look like my kids have huge influences from their uncles, their aunts, sports leaders. Like we affect, or if you're working with parents, if you're a support person like a yoga teacher or a counselor or a psychologist working with parents, so every step that we take to become freer, we are impacting generations going forward. And what's really, I think, important is for us to know that there's nothing wrong with our book of law. So often we come at this like a real negative thing, but there's nothing wrong with it because it is what has kept you alive to date. It has kept you alive. It has kept you safe. But this is where I'm going to change that from alive. You're alive, but maybe you're not free to live. So what we're looking at is creating this choice and this freedom to discover what your laws are, what your habits are, what lies you're living by, and then becoming free to make choices as to whether you want to keep them or not. When we look at something, and then the view when we look out from our law book, because if you imagine our law book is like our framework, and when we look out, we're looking out through a smoky mirror, and then we have wounds. We have these hurts, wounds. The wounds again. I love the word wounds. But change it to a word that suits you. It's from, again, I'm using the wounds because it's in the four agreements. But here's an example of a wound. So when I was about 6, I suspect, I don't know, I was in school practicing standing on, those boards. Anyway, we were standing some on the chairs, so 3 layers high, practicing for the communion. Big deal. If you haven't gone to an Irish school, big deal. Holy Communion, back in whenever it was that I was doing Holy Communion, big deal. It's still a big deal, but it was a big deal. So the whole school's out singing, practicing to sing. And this nun, Sister Irene, in case you're interested, Sister Irene starts at the end of the line, and she's going along and she's listening, and she's listening. There's 3 rows of people, you know, and she's just listening. And then she passes me, one person, comes back, and I'm right in the middle, and she points to me and she says, stop. So there I am, I'm singing my heart out. I'm like happy out, singing away. And she points to me and says, you're putting everyone off. Stop. Mime. You're putting everybody off. The whole lot of them are off because of you. Stop and mime. So that was it. I had to mime the songs. Now, there she is with her black magic. Right? She 100% cast a spell of black magic. And I was 6. So, you know, I think fair enough. 30 years before I sang again. Right. I'm in the car one day, some music is on, and next thing I realize that I'm singing along, and I really enjoyed it. So then I started singing out really loud in the car with the music really high so nobody could hear me, and only in the car when I was by myself. I suddenly discovered I liked singing. Now I am a shite singer. She was right. You know, I went to, I was in a Steiner school, so there's a lot of Steiner teachers, and one of them was a singing teacher. And I was in Austria. I don't know, is that some kind? Oh, Switzerland, at a conference with her. And we were up in the mountains, and she's a singing teacher. And I was saying, oh, I'm really self-conscious about this voice. And I told her the whole story. And I said, I really want to work on overcoming this like fear. This belief. It's a belief. And so she had me like up in the mountains going, ogling, like, oh, la, 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 whatever. And she eventually got me going at the top of my voice, which was kind of cool, and really, really liberating and really, really free. And then next thing that I got answered by lads down in the valley, start ogling back up at me or whatever. We had this conversation going on. When I came back, then I got singing lessons with the guy there, and he just said, yeah, Laura, I think you should take up the flute. So, anyway, never a singer. I probably won't ever become a pop singer. However, for 40 years, I held that wound and I integrated that. Like, so yes, she did her black magic. Was she doing the best she could? 100%. Because what was she stressing about? She was stressing about all the people around me. So 6 of us all off key, doing our own little thing. And she wanted this beautiful experience for everybody, blah, blah, blah. So was she doing her best? 100%. Was she kind? I don't think so. But it was unconscious. Did she do black magic? 100%. Did I take it on? Yes. I was 6. Fair enough. Take it on, believe it, 100%. But now I'm an adult. So now I can look and see, here is a belief. Is it true? Well, I don't think it's true that I can't use my voice and that my voice is terrible, because she said, stop singing, you're putting everybody off. But I took a whole bigger thing out of that, like, like singing in the shower. I had to transition to be able to sing in the shower. Do you know what I mean? I'm not putting anybody off singing in the shower. Maybe my husband, but like, whatever, he can get over it. And now, now I do meditations and I do all these kind of yoga things where I can use my voice, where I use my voice to support people remember who they are. I'm using my voice, the thing that the nun told me not to use, for transformation, to support others also transform. So like people have often said to me, listening to you, I love listening to you at night because you really support me relax, or I love listening, And that's the same voice that at 6 I chose to stop using, because I believed what the black magic that was offered to me. And so that's a wound. And so if I was singing somewhere in whatever, like at a concert or something, and someone made a comment around my voice, I would have taken that very personally, and I would have got very upset about it, because they would have touched a wound. So what we're doing here is we're looking to see, can we find our wounds, and then can we choose to heal them, to fundamentally to heal them. You know, to take that little 6-year-old girl, give her a big hug and say, well, wasn't she pretty mean? That was a pretty mean thing to say. And you know what? Rock on or whatever. Yeah. And so this is what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks, is looking at noticing in what we say to ourselves, noticing in our body when we have reactions in our body, what our wounds are, our triggers. Whenever you feel a sensation and you start to get defensive, like my daughter with the dress. Absolutely, what I said was, what I didn't say, the breath I took, the breath I held was unkind, 100%. Her wound was her insecurity around the dress. Can you see the difference? So your challenge this week is to notice, where are your wounds? When do you take and feeling it, noticing where you feel it, what are the stories, what are the wounds, and then we'll work with them. We'll look at, see why, where do they form, are they true, can you heal them, do you want to heal them? Some of them you might not want to touch, some of them might be like my one with my daughter, that was at least 18 years working on that, you know. So to be able to forgive myself for a thought. It was a thought. It took me 18 years of constant, actual, active working on it to be able to forgive myself. So some of them are big, some of them are small. Start with the play ones. Notice when you feel a bit irritated, when you take something personally, because when you take something personally, here is a nugget. When you take something personally, that is someone touching your wound. That's your wound. Yeah. So like me with the husband and all that nonsense about the thing, that's my bullshit belief that like a woman's role is in the home and that I wasn't earning as much as him, so I should have the dinner ready, or whatever nonsense. Like, not in my head, not a belief, and not how I reared my children, but still in my body somewhere I had these completely insane beliefs. Now, he might think that I should be developing those beliefs and I should be at home making his dinner. But, you know, so that I can be free to make or not make the dinner without any of this drama. Am I making a dinner? And I shouldn't be making dinner because I'm the woman. And if I make the dinner, does that disempower me as a woman? Like, it's just bleeding dinner. Do you know what I'm saying? So the more I can clear my wounds, the freer I am and the more freedom I have. So there you go. Your homework this week is to notice your reactions. Notice, when do you react to something someone says, or something you hear on the radio, or something that in your life? When are you reacting? Because your reactions, they are your wounds. That's your key in. And then we're going to start to notice and play with where are they formed, how are they formed, and then how can you support and clear them? To fundamentally, how can you know what you require, and how can you ask for the help that you need, and how can you receive the support that you want? And when you can do that, then you can also offer support to somebody else and be available to them, because we then are free to live our Dharma, free to be in heaven on earth now. There you go. See, I can keep time sometimes. So think about it. If over the week you come up with questions, let me know, because the next week I'm going to talk a little bit about that very early stage and how we set that up. So both for yourself as a ex-child and still with that little child inside you, also as a parent or as a teacher or as anybody who speaks to kids, noticing how we speak to them. We'll talk a little bit about language and about how we create that rule book. And then the following week we'll look at how do we heal a lot of those wounds. Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. Hopefully this is useful.